All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening to you at home. Good evening to you at home. So, this is the second installment of the series of Light and Shadows. I'm just going to recap a little bit about what I said last week in the last episode. The title was From Singularity to Duality, where we spoke about the singularity. We can call it consciousness because Hashem is consciousness. I mean, one aspect of Him is this pure awareness. If you think about what a neshama is, the neshama is the origin of a point of view. So, when you're looking out of your head, it's like behind my eyes originates a point of view. And everyone has got this point of view. So what is this origin? What is this point? It's a speck of consciousness that perceives and processes information. Okay, that's why there's this connection between da'at, which is consciousness or perception, and machshava, which is thought. That's what we're doing. Machshava means thought, and a machshev is a computer. And what is that a computer does? It processes information. So this is what we're doing as human beings, when we perceive things, we're processing things, and there is a level at which we're able to process this information. And just like with computers, there are different types of processors. Some are stronger than others. The same thing is that with a human being, these levels of ability to process information, we can clump that all in under a heading called consciousness. Okay? Awareness. What exactly is awareness? What exactly is consciousness? The truth is that nobody knows. Nobody knows. No one knows what awareness actually is. What we can say is that it is a living thing. So, just to give over this perspective that I have about the greatness and the absolute magnitude of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of Hashem, is that if we could see everything as it is, we would see atoms, right? It was Einstein that says that reality is an illusion, albeit a very consistent one. Okay? Because if we could actually see what everything actually is, we wouldn't see or perceive separation. We would see the entire, not just world, the entire universe as full with atoms the exact same way as we see the ocean as full of water.
We see ones and O's, right? We see ones and O's.
We see ones and O's, depending on where you're at, I suppose. Ones and O's, it's a binary approach. But essentially, if we could see everything as it is, we would see the atom. Now, the atom is an important particle to look at because there is so much in it that testifies about the accuracy and the consistencies of universal laws, which is one of my obsessions, because in my own life, I reached a very, very low point in my life at about the age of 29, 30. And I found myself at a very dead-end job doing the most, what I believe, or what felt to me like very degrading and demeaning work. So I was basically, there's a whole story about how it happened, but the bottom line is that the way that I made my way to the bottom of my barrel, so to speak, was at a job where I was opening and closing a gate with a remote control. That's how life manifested for me. That wasn't the job that I applied to, and like I said, there was a whole story about how I got there. But at the end of it, when I was there, I was looking around, and I had, until that point, I had quite a, I won't say illustrious, but on a bootstrap level, without having a university or a college degree understanding of business, I had a lot of practical experience in business. So I had a restaurant, and I had a manufacturing business that manufactured and supplied decor to chain stores and pharmacies in South Africa. And I was a bit of an entrepreneur in the sense of like, okay, I've got an idea, let's make it work. What they call it bootstrapping. And through all of this experience that I had of like starting things from nothing and then building them up to like working concerns, suddenly I found myself at the bottom of a barrel, opening and closing a gate, announcing people to the receptionist. For me specifically, it felt like a massive fall from grace. And the only thing I could think about the whole time when I was in this hellhole of mine, because it was just very difficult for me to wake up, because I had terrible depressive anxiety, and I used to wake up every day thinking to myself, oh God, take me out of this. And I would keep on going to this dead-end job, rushing there to get there in the morning. Why? Because of the fear of not being able to pay bills. And fear is what keeps people stuck in patterns. It's what keeps people stuck in dead-end jobs. It's what keeps people stuck in dead-end relationships. It's what keeps people stuck in any type of so-called prison that they feel that they're in, is the fear of not being able to succeed once they make it out. Okay? So it's only fear that can keep you stuck. And this fear, there's a lot of acronyms that people say about what fear is. One of my favorite ones is false evidence appearing real. Okay, that it looks like it's going to happen, and there's this fear that if I do this, then everything's going to be bad, and I just don't have the kalim inside of me to actually like deal with that. The truth of the matter is that at some point, for the vast majority of people, is that you reach a level of I simply cannot take it anymore, and nothing can be worse than this. And it's at that point, which I call a point of release, which is the equivalent of if an archer was pulling back an arrow and there was enough negative tension built up in the arrow, that just at a point of release, all of that negative tension, let's call that darkness, gets transformed into a positive expansion. And as I said in last week's session, that this is ishapcha chashucha lenora. This is the transforming of darkness to light. But there has to be a point of release. There's got to be a certain point where the dynamic changes. And so in a human being's life, because for me, everything is about the practical human application. So all of the knowledge, all of the wisdom that's out there, my obsession is, how do I turn this into a step 1, step 2, step 3 for the human being right here, right now, that I can actually start changing my life for the better. That is my obsession. And so in this dead-end job, all I could do was look around, and I had read enough books on self-development to know that I have a say in my reality. I have a say in how things manifest. There is a certain amount of life that happens to a person. There is obviously the hand of God that is putting people in different places. But for the most part, there is a say that a person has in their life and in their decision making. So what I knew was that I co-created, and if I had to take full responsibility, I created this reality. So I had to look and see, well, what was it about my model of reality that put me in this dead-end job, in this terrible depressive anxiety where I hated being awake. I hated being awake, and I have absolutely no doubt that people here have gone through it, and I have absolutely no doubt that you at home know exactly what I'm talking about. So I decided that I was going to learn the rules of the game. Okay? The universal laws. Another way of saying universal laws is midat hadin. Right? It's the aspect of Hashem that we call Elokim that created this world, because Hashem subjected himself to these laws. He created this process. If Hashem wanted to, he could have just gone, Bereshit, boom, everything's ready. But he didn't do that. There was a day 1, and there was what happened on day 1. There was a day 2, there was a day 3, a day 4, a day 5, a day 6. Why was there this process? So that Hashem there'd be a process. There'd be a process called nature. We are all part of nature. Nature has laws. We say every day in davening, Chok natan v'lo yavor. Hashem created these laws, and he himself will not transgress those laws. And when he does, it is so irregular that what do we call that? A miracle. So Hashem subjects himself to his own laws. It even says in the Rambam that Mashiach will come not b'derech hanes, that the Geula will happen through laws, through the laws of nature. So these laws of nature, there are 7 of them. The universal laws, hermetic principles, universal laws, these are the laws that govern everything. And as I said in last week's session, I am on this mission to find everything that I teach and everything that I know, all of my coaching principles and all my coaching methodologies and philosophies in the Torah, and so far, so good. Haven't found everything yet. Sometimes I refer to myself as Indiana Yona on this mission to find these things, and it's been fascinating to say the least. And I found, like I said last week, many things primarily in the deep parts of the Torah, so not the surface parts, the deeper innards, the Pnimiyut Torah, Kabbalah and Chassidut. And so, in these laws speak about, these 7 laws, they speak about one being consciousness, right? It's called the law of mentalism, that everything's happening in the mind. We see this at the shoresh of the word Bereshit is Rosh. Even within the Kabbalistic Sfirot, we have the Chochmah and Bina, which is referred to as Moichin, which means brain. So there's a thinking faculty, but everything is happening in our mind. And then the Arizal was able to uncover a part of Kabbalah, part of the Sfirot that we didn't know before, that there is an interchangeable Sfira with Keter, which is crown or superconscious, it's the consciousness of the neshama. There is an interchangeable one that makes everything more human and more accessible and more subjective, and that is the Sfira of Da'at. And Da'at means, well, we can translate it as knowledge. It's not really accurate. It's more consciousness or perception. And then even within Da'at, you have what's called Da'at Tachton and Da'at Elyon. You can refer to that as the lower self and the higher self. That's for a different discussion. So you have a law that refers to consciousness. Then you've got a law that refers to vibration, that everything vibrates. Then you have a law that refers to correspondence, that as above, so below. That's how we know that, like we say in Judaism, that what happens in the Beit Din Shel Mala happens in the Beit Din Shel Mata, and the other way around. What happens in the Beit Din Shel Mata happens in the Beit Din Shel Mala. That's what we do in Hatarat Nadarim, in the annulment of vows, is that we form a Beit Din Shel Mata, and we say, like, this is how we now sentence you to clarity, or we annul your vows, and just as we have done in this Beit Din Shel Mata, so it will be done in the Beit Din Shel Mala, because there is a correspondence between all levels and all realms. Then we go into the other 4, which are, just quickly, gender, which refers to male and female. It's also known as the law of creation, because in order to create, there has to be a union, a yichud, between masculine and feminine principles. When these masculine and feminine come together, then there is creation. And even there is a process. The masculine gives, the feminine receives and holds it, and then gestates, or goes through pregnancy, and then there is creation. There is also polarity, which deals with positive and negative. In Torah language, we call this Ze Le'omat Ze. We get this from Shlomo Melech, that Hashem created the world Ze Le'omat Ze. And I spoke about last week that for everything that exists, there is a polarity. For every negative, there is a positive, and for every positive, there is a negative. It cannot be any other way. It cannot be any other way. Then we've got cause and effect, and then we have rhythm, which is Ratzov Vashov. Okay? So,
have you written these laws down?
Very much so. Very much so. I've got, if somebody wants a summary of these laws, first of all, you can Google them, but if you want to look at things that I've prepared specifically,
we can share it with...
Yeah, you can go to my website, breakthroughmatrix.com, and there is a lot of free stuff there that you can check out.
What is your website?
breakthroughmatrix.com. So, I was referring to the atom. The atom is a very unique particle, because it contains, some say 2, some say 3 parts. What are these parts? You have a proton, you have an electron, and you have a neutron. Okay? So the proton is passive. It stays in the middle or in the center.
The neutron.
The proton. Proton is passive, and it sort of blinks. Some people say that it blinks in and out of creation. So Hashem is mechadesh b'chol yom b'tuv maseh bereshit. That Hashem is literally creating the proton from nothing, and literally a maseh bereshit. Other people say in quantum physics that quantum mechanics that when it's not here, it's in a parallel universe. It's neither here nor there. The bottom line is that the proton doesn't move; it's passive, and then therefore it meets the criteria of the feminine principle, which is passive. Just like Shabbos, we know Shabbos to be the queen, and Shabbos is a day of being, not of doing, as opposed to the 6 days of creation, which are masculine days, the Zer Anpin, and those are days of doing, which is masculine. The same thing as at night, the moon, we know the moon is feminine. We're not active at night, we sleep. During the day, we are active. The electron, however, moves around, and therefore it meets the criteria of the masculine, because electron comes from the word like electro. Electro means expansive. Yeah, like the sun is electro, it's giving out heat. It is expansive. And so that meets the criteria of the masculine. And then you've got the neutron, which is neither. Okay? Let's call it neutral. The teacher before me spoke about the sphere of Keter. And the sphere of Keter has within it a pnimiut. All the sphirot are objective lights. That means that they are from Hashem. But at the end of all creation, once Hashem was finished creating everything with these sphirot, he did something with these sphirot. What did he do? He stuck them in man. So that means that because all these sphirot are inside man, that each one has a internal human psychological experience. Okay? An internal experience. It's called a pnimiut. An internal experience. I'm not going to go through all of them now, but the one of Keter is the only one, the crown, is the only one that's got 3 of these pnimiut. And those 3 are emunah, which means either faith or belief, ratzon, which is will, not desire specifically, because desire and will are slightly different in gender. And then you've got, tanug first and then ratzon. So emunah, faith or belief, tanug, pleasure, and ratzon, will. And if you had to look at these 3 things, emunah is neither masculine nor feminine. Maybe the faith and the belief, maybe that does divide into a gender, but I haven't given that much thought. Ta'anug, which is pleasure, is feminine, and ratzon, which is will, that means long term, that means I've got to have discipline, that is masculine. So here within the Keter, within these 3 aspects of the pnimiut of Keter, we have something that is neutral, something that is masculine, something that is feminine, just like the atom. So if you had to think of the atom being alive with a point of perspective, a point of view, just like I said in the beginning that every person through their perception is the origin of a point of view, that is consciousness, imagine that the atom, every single atom, also had a point of view. Every single atom in the universe had a point of view. It would make that much more understandable sense to our limited minds. The greatness of Hashem, this alive awareness, the super duper conscious awareness that is absolutely everywhere, that is able to control everything and every living thing through its own awareness.
That means it has a soul, no?
So I don't know if it means it has a soul. Possibly it does, because we know that everything has a nefesh. Whether or not it's in the neshama, it's probably not, because it's a chelek elokam imal mamash, and it's what Hashem blew into man that created the ruach medaber or malel. But we know that everything has a nefesh. It says in the Zohar that everything has a nefesh. Some things and everything is light. It's just that these inanimate things, or rather mineral things, they are light that do not shine. So, well, looking at the time and almost time to wrap up. It's amazing. So,
About 6 minutes.
yeah, I'm taking a little bit more. So, this consciousness that we have, it gets filtered through our paradigm, and then has a processing. There's a processing effect that happens, and then this is what becomes information, knowledge, understanding. Now, where does all of this fit in with what I'm talking about in general? Is that the degree to which a person is able to perceive, understand, or attach significant meaning or interpretation to perception. Just like I spoke about before, that each computer is different in its ability to do certain levels of processing, there is a level of consciousness that a person has, an own awareness, and l'tzorech hanyan, there's also this connection to Hashem that supersedes a person's own perception and very often their own emotional response. I'll give an example. The two things that every person, but specifically every Jew, is dealing with on a constant, consistent basis, literally minute to minute, hour to hour, day by day, and that is this balance or this integration, if you want to call it, between emunah, which is faith or belief, and bitachon. Emunah, faith or belief, is basically an intellectual exercise. I believe that there is a God. I believe that He created heaven and earth. I believe that He's creating everything. I believe that He's a good God. But then bitachon is something completely different. Because if I'm faced with challenges, and these challenges affect me on an emotional level, give an example of what I spoke about beforehand, is that when a person is stuck in a pattern or stuck in a so-called prison, what's preventing them coming out of it is the fear of not being able to deal with life once they're out of it. Right? So, would that be an emunah problem or a bitachon problem?
Bitachon.
It would be a bitachon problem. So we can say that emunah would be an intellectual thing. So it's easier to believe that there's a God, depending on where you come from, depending on your education, depending on you can connect to a faith of how things are, beyond my perception. You can connect to a faith. But bitachon is where this filters into such a level of trust, because that's what bitachon means. It means trust. It filters into such a degree that my own emotional state remains a positive one, or a pleasurable one, or a calm one. Now, this is not easy at all, because where do we see the greatest test of bitachon in the Torah? Is when the Bnei Israel were in the desert, and they were being fed, literally, by Hashem, literally, through what? Through the manna. But what was the condition of the manna, of the manna? What was the condition?
Only take what you want that day.
You get food for one day, and you cannot hoard or store. You cannot take more than what you get, and it's enough for one day and one day only. Talk about living from hand to mouth. Okay? Who in today's world could possibly live like that without anxiety? Who could possibly, the level of bitachon that is required to be able to say, no, Hashem will provide, it feels like a superhuman feat. It feels like a superhuman ability. But the truth of the matter is that that's where we need to be. I'm not saying that a person, that you need to go from hand to mouth, but I'm saying that it is such a strong test that don't feel bad if you feel like you're not succeeding in it. Because the Bnei Israel were taken out of Egypt by the hand of God. They saw miracles upon miracles upon miracles upon miracles. It says that's what a maidservant or a midwife or a child, what they saw in the Kriyat Yamsuf, what they saw in the splitting of the seas, the revelations that they saw were greater than what Yechezkel saw in the Maaseh Merkava when he was able to perceive the holy chariot. Even the Bnei Israel that were privy to see such amazing revelations, when it came time for them to actually be fed they were being fed by Hashem, literally, in the desert. even they had problems connecting to their own bitachon because it is such a challenge. So it looks like we're out of time. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'll wrap it up with this: is that each person has got a consciousness with which they perceive the world and create over time a model of reality. A model of reality is basically a map about how things work in the world. So if just like your maps application, your GPS, if it's not up to date and updated, then you may get lost when you're trying to get to your destination. The same thing happens is that we need to have an updated map or an accurate map about how things work in the world. That's why we learn, because all this information that we have in the Torah, our rabbis are teaching us what the correct model of reality is in order for us to navigate this world with a sense of bitachon. Because when we say that Hashem has our back, when we say that like Hashem is good and that everything happens for the best, it's very difficult to connect to that when what we're witnessing seems like, at least on a perceptual level, seems like really, really bad stuff. So each person has perception that gets controlled, or let's call it regulated by a level of consciousness. Let's call consciousness now an awareness of the elements of the world and the elements at play, so that I create within my own mind a model of reality and a sense of my own self-awareness. And based on this, a person is able to either be in a place of calm and peace or not. And I'll finish off with this about the importance of peace. So there are two, on the highest level, on the highest esoteric level, there are only two states of being. There is a state of singularity and a state of duality, like I spoke about last week. Singularity means that there is only one, there is no two, there is only being. And in a singularity, there is no doing, because doing is a verb, requires what? A subject and an object. That means an aspect of duality. So in a singularity, there is no verb. There's just being. In a duality, then there's all types of verbs. There's loving, there's hating, there's loving, there's fighting, there's every you have the law of duality, you have the law of polarity, because polarity is part of duality. So, just getting my thoughts right. So, in order to achieve these states, because like I said before, that everything in life has a pnimiyut, everything in life has got a psychological, internal psychological experience. So too, singularity and duality have human states. So the state of singularity is a state of peace. Why is it a state of peace? Because you don't have to do anything to achieve a state of peace. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to get it. You have to just be okay with everything as it is. You just sit and just tell yourself, I'm okay with everything as it is. It's what Hashem wants. I'm okay. And just go into a place of acceptance. You can achieve a sense of peace without having to do anything. Therefore, if no action or no verb is required, that means that peace is a state of singularity. And that makes sense, because Shalom is one of Hashem's name.
Is that a feminine state?
It's neither, because it's a singularity. Feminine and masculine are part of duality. And by the way, feminine and masculine, they come together through yichud, right? Which is the pnimiyut, the internal experience of da'at. We say Adam Yadayit Chava, that through this yichud of masculine and feminine, we go from a duality into a singularity of connection. It's the ultimate connection, and that's how we come back to sing. And in the singularity, what happens? Creation. It's a good question. But the state, the godly state of duality is fulfillment, and I'll speak about that at a completely different time. Fulfillment is it's a godly state of duality, because number one, you have to do something. You can't just sit around and be fulfilled. And it's a godly state because it's not just about doing something nice. Because if you were to be able to get fulfilled just by, let's say, doing chesed, by being kind, then everybody that does chesed will be fulfilled and they would do nothing else. But the truth of the matter is that fulfillment comes from purpose. And I'll end on this. Fulfillment comes from purpose. And purpose means that you found something that it feels like this is why I was created. And I can do it every day, all the time. And what? And not get
Depleted.
bored.
Yeah.
Not get bored. Now you've got to think about that for a second. Because whatever it is that you do, if you do a lot of something, at some point, you're going to get bored. Except for your purpose. Except for your purpose. Your purpose is something that you can do from day till night, from morning till night, all day, every day. Not only not get bored, but get lit up and excited every time as if it was the first time. So that means that there's some sort of hardwiring that happened. That means that it happened in childhood. That means that there was a negative imprint that caused this positive polarity or this expansion of ability. That means that on some level, instead of getting bored, you get lit up. It all goes down to your childhood wounding, which is what shadow is all about. And we'll get to that in other sessions. I wish everybody a wonderful week and a good Shabbos. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
Thank you.